So we've also got a full program for the rest of the day. Exciting new innovations and permutations of what's going on. One of the most exciting experimental, future-oriented activities is NELFT is leading the way in another way. They will be establishing the first open dialogue-based service within the NHS in the country. And here to present that is a formidable team who will present their work. Russell, you want to introduce them for me?
Okay. This slide is supposed to be quite way behind. Okay, so wow, Mark's got a lot of slides. He always does. Okay, here we are. Right, this one. So at last year's conference, those of you who were here might remember that there was lots of people who were asking questions in the audience and saying, well, we're not part of this pilot project, we're not part of the research, we don't live in a small part of Nottingham or a small part of Havering or a little bit of Somerset where we're going to be getting open dialogue. How could we have open dialogue? And so after that, it was quite effective actually, a number of people who said that and have since come to us and approached us in order to be able to get this kind of care. So I went back to our trust and we talked about how we might be able to do something about this, because as of April 2014, something called Choose a Book came into mental health services, which used to exist in physical health care for many years, but for the first time it came into mental health services, where if you go to your GP to be referred into secondary mental health care, then you can choose wherever you go. Interestingly, talking to people at the national level about this, not one person has utilised that right to date. So we thought that perhaps if we set up a service that runs on open dialogue lines, not all of the criteria will be fulfilled clearly, because if people are coming to us from around the country, then we won't be able to visit them, they'd have to come to our offices, etc. But we'd be able to use some of the open dialogue principles that are already recommended in NICE, for example, to set up a service that can receive referrals from primary care. And so we got some funding for the trust, and we've set up basically this service called Dialogue First. And today we're just going to hear a couple of words from a couple of the guys who are part of the team, and also how anybody who's interested, and I think we've passed some leaflets around, anybody who's interested who is currently not in secondary care but looking to get referred into secondary care could come along and refer themselves to the service. So I'll hand over to Kathy.
Hello everyone, I'm really honoured to be managing this Dialogue First service, and we've got a really good team of people that we're working together with, and I'd like to introduce some of them. There's also some in the audience who, if they gave a wave, they're very shy. And some of the names you heard mentioned by some of the people talking about their experiences were the people who are currently delivering open dialogue and will be part of the Dialogue First service. I'm a family therapist by background, and so I really feel very pleased that we're able to do this service that involves the whole family and network.
Hi, my name is Tom Putman, or Dr. Tom to the Halcrows. I'm a psychiatry SPR in NELFT, and I did the open dialogue training in the first cohort. And I'm very excited to be working in the Dialogue First team. I might just take this opportunity to plug the pod bulletin, which I edit, and you can sign up and read at podbulletin.com. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Jabril. I'm also a psychiatry SPR working over at NELFT at the moment, and as well as being a clinician in Dialogue First team, you'll hear a little bit about me around the social media side of things that we're doing to promote Dialogue First.
Hi, my name's Jasmine Phillips. I'm a community mental health nurse. Been part of the training, and to be quite honest, when we first started the training, I thought, why are they teaching me what I've already learned in my nursing training? Because I qualified 2 years ago. And I really couldn't understand it. I was really confused to actually realise that the training was absolutely fantastic. It was a brilliant opportunity, and actually I've realised what listening is, and being with service users, families and carers, friends, and how to actually sit with people and listen. So I'm really excited to see what's to come. And yeah, I don't do public speaking.
So I'm just going to briefly give you the 4 kind of criteria really, or 3 criteria in where you get the service from. And then Tom and Amy are going to give you much more information about where to find a lot more information. So the referral is via your GP, as Russell said. So you need to go along to your GP or encourage someone who you think would benefit from the service to go along to their GP and request Dialogue First, and that will be on their e-referral system, which was previously Choose and Book. So the criteria really is that you're not currently receiving mental health services. It doesn't matter, of course, if you've received them in the past, that you're not in crisis, and that you're able to travel to us. Really, we've got rooms in Dagenham or Haroldwood, and that's kind of it. Really, that's the bottom line. But I'll hand you over to Tom and Amy.
Okay, so first of all, NELFT Dialogue First is on Twitter at NELFT Dialogue 1, all one word, and 1 the number. So this is the Twitter account is something that I'll be sort of taking charge of. So please, if you use Twitter, please follow us, tweet us. It'll be a source of information on Dialogue First, on Open Dialogue Pod, related activities in the UK and around the world. Okay.
Great, and I'm the face behind the Facebook page. I guess it's helpful to say that we all wear different masks from time to time, professional masks and so on, and the social media mask can be a little bit daunting, so Tom and I thought it would be useful to show our faces. So Tom's behind the Twitter page and I'm behind the Facebook page, so if you're on social media or not, it's fairly simple to find us. If you search for NELFT Dialogue First in the little search box at the top, you'll come up with a page. If you click the like button, you'll get updates around the service and other Open Dialogue related activities. And there's also a link. You can go either via the Facebook page, or you can go to nelft.nhs.uk/Dialogue First, and you'll come up with our new website, which is on the NELFT Trust pages. And there's a lot more information about the team and how we work, how to access us, and so on. So there's various sections, and so, what is Open Dialogue? I think if you've been here today, you probably got a fairly good idea of what it is, but who we are, our approach. And then along the bottom, I don't know if you can see it from there, but there's quite a bit of important information in what we offer, how to make contact, and so on. And if there are any questions, you can also email us. And the email address, I saw it on a slide earlier, is dialogue.first@nelft.nhs.uk. I think that's all from us.
Yes, just to say that if anybody wants to, a few people have approached us today anyway, but if anyone just wants to have an informal chat about Dialogue First, then please do approach any of us for any more information you'd like.
So, one of the first people to start to spread the word about Open Dialogue in the UK was Nick Putman. He works in private practice in central London, and he's one of the first people who also set up the 3-year Open Dialogue training, one of the original trainings too. We've been in collaboration and conversation and dialogue about our various projects. Nick also has a private practice and sees people there too, so there's an alternative way, apart from the Dialogue First service or your local services, if you're in the trial, to receive Open Dialogue. And we thought it would be really important to give you an overview of all of the different options people have if they're interested in pursuing this kind of service for themselves or their loved ones. And Nick would be a great port of call if people were able to access him, so we thought it would be really good for him to talk to us about his service and his experience today. So it's with great pleasure. Please welcome Nick Putman.
It's a real honour and a privilege to be here today, to be invited by Russell, Val, Mark and Katie, who are, I think, doing really great work to help move the NHS in a more dialogical direction, along with many others. It's also a great pleasure to be with you. I'm here to talk about the work of Open Dialogue UK, which has been a 4-year journey so far. I can see that on the programme, the title of my presentation is Open Dialogue Outside the NHS. And I'm not quite sure how this came to be so, because it doesn't quite capture the nature of the work that we do. I could speak about the 5 NHS trusts who are represented on the first full Open Dialogue training in the UK, and the additional trusts who will be joining us for the foundation training starting in June. But I'd rather have a different focus. I started my career inside the NHS as an assistant psychologist and then a trainee clinical psychologist. Whilst I learned a good deal along the way, I started to feel too constrained within the systems that I was a part of, that it was not possible for me to do the work that I wanted to do. I did not feel free to really be with people in creative ways. Opportunities for meaning making, for breakthroughs, particularly with those affected by what we might call psychosis, were limited. And so I stepped outside the system. I wandered and I travelled, learning as much as I could along the way about different ways of responding to those affected by psychosis. Most of the approaches I became familiar with were very much alternatives to the system, deliberately positioned to be so. And whilst I appreciated the reasons for this, and was time and time again inspired by much of what I witnessed and experienced, I also started to become concerned about how marginalised such alternatives can be and can become. It was then, with a great enthusiasm, that I started to learn about the Open Dialogue approach around 5 years ago. For here was an approach that not only chimed with my values, but also operated on the level of a public mental health system. And here you can see some of the values that I'm speaking of. I saw in Open Dialogue the opportunity to provide a high-quality therapeutic service to greater numbers of people affected by psychosis and other forms of suffering. Being something of an idealist, I never lost sight of the system. And I remembered this week, as I gave thought to this presentation, that on leaving the system all those years ago, I had a dream that one day those in the system and those outside the system would be more united. For there are, of course, so many people, within and without, who have so much to offer. And I think that in Open Dialogue, which is both a way of organising services and a way of being with people, that we have this opportunity. In the diversity of people who come to these conferences, in the inclusion of peers in training programmes that have started up in the UK, in the basic philosophical principle that every voice must be heard, in the recognition that we all suffer, we have a real opportunity to move forward together. And yet, there is a word of caution. Volkmar Aderhold is a psychiatrist who rose to the level of Assistant Medical Director of Psychiatric Services in Hamburg before stepping out of conventional services in order to develop the Open Dialogue approach in Germany and elsewhere, notably in the Parachute Project in New York City. He will be leading our foundation training program, and he spoke these words: during the course of dialogue with delegates at our recent conference in London. Now, open dialogue is not anti-psychiatry. There is a psychiatrist who oversees the service in Western Lapland. So I'm not quoting Volkmar for this reason. And he could perhaps have been speaking of a number of other professional groups who can also struggle to relate. Instead, there are two key points that I would like to emphasise. Firstly, I would like to say that open dialogue starts with us. If we can't work things out with each other, what chance do we have to be of service, to be available to others? Open dialogue is an embodied process, and at every moment there is the opportunity to practice. Of course, there are hundreds of us here, each with our own point of view, our own experience. Getting together is in many respects a logistical and an experiential nightmare. And yet, I think open dialogue offers us a framework within which there is space for differences that can be celebrated. Secondly, I think that the more systems are open to each other, the better our chances will be. Though there are, of course, different challenges involved in developing open dialogue in the NHS and outside the NHS, I'm personally excited about both. And at Open Dialogue UK, we are working on both fronts. That should have happened earlier. I can't see what I'm presenting on here. Beyond this, though, I would like to suggest that open dialogue, that the possibility of meeting, of finding meaning together, transcends all institutional structures, and thus can look much the same wherever it may be found. Russell asked me if I could share an example of the clinical work we are doing, and whilst of course I understood this request, I didn't feel quite ready to do so. Partly this relates to how busy we are, but mostly I feel like there is a lot of learning going on, and at the moment, and we need some time to absorb our early experiences and to think about how we can present our work in a meaningful and respectful way. I would, however, like to share something of an experience that we had on the full training programme this week in one of our small supervision groups. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to be with you for the whole of today because I had other commitments, and it may be that you've already heard a story similar to this. And if you have, I'll be delighted. Myself and a colleague had the pleasure of inviting one of the families we were working with to a live family session, so part of the supervision process. We met with the family for around an hour, and then, with the family present, we invited the outer circle of students to reflect on what had struck them in the meeting. The family then left, and we had the opportunity to reflect again on our experience, not focusing on the family, but rather on our own experience of being present in the meeting. I, for one, was fighting back the tears for 15 minutes. And it seemed to me that almost all my colleagues were deeply moved and not far from tears themselves. To be able to see and hear how, in the space of half a dozen weekly meetings, the person at the centre of concern, 17 years of age, sensitive, gifted, immersed in the wilds of thought and feeling following a psychotic episode, could start to find his way, along with his family, through meetings characterised by intense emotion and conflict, towards poetic expressions of sorrow and joy, in such a way that an experience of peaceful coexistence became possible. Meaning could emerge, as well as hope for the future, was both overwhelming and affirming. Is this not the main reason why we do the work we do? It is for me. And so I'd like to say a little more about the work we're doing at Open Dialogue UK. We now have established premises in Dalston, an interim space for network meetings and development work. And this is the main meeting room. And here is the team who are currently working there. So there's myself, Monica, Paul and Rachel, who are all part of the training programme. They've come on as independent practitioners. So we either have people coming from the NHS or people from public services in other countries coming, or we have people who are interested in forming teams at the centre. So Monica, Paul and Ray are working with me there. So up till now we've had 2 days of work a week for doing this work. Now because we've got these new premises, we can work there 4 days a week, from Tuesdays to Fridays, and we're also starting to do home visits, which is a great pleasure to be able to do that. The team will be expanding with independent practitioners from the foundation training that's due to start in June. And I'm not sure why the text is a bit cut off, I'm sorry about that. There'll be individual work taking place. I've specialised in working with people experiencing psychosis, so most of my background's been individual work, so I do that alongside the family meetings, as does Monica as well. And there are plans to develop subsidised work, so we're going to be exploring various ways in which this work can be subsidised. So in terms of the current work that we're doing, Russell mentioned the first full Open Dialogue training programme. Though there are a number of training programmes, of course, there's the pod training, there's Mary Olson's training in the States, and trainings developing elsewhere, notably in Italy, and plans for trainings in Ireland and other places. This is the first full training to fully replicate the process that 90 to 95% of the staff go through in Western Lapland. I very much agree with the point earlier that training is an awful word for what we do. I'd much rather have another word. I've written articles about this, so I think we need to give more thought to that, because it's very much a process that people go through. It's not about jumping through hoops. It's about becoming more embodied in this way of working. And the 6-year training I did in psychotherapy training at the Philadelphia Association was a game-changing experience for me, so I have some feeling for training, or whatever else we might want to call it. So we started the 2nd year of that, and I'm very glad that all the students decided to come back for the 2nd year. We have an increased capacity for therapeutic work now at the new premises, and as I mentioned, in June we'll be starting the foundation training run by, we've got Volkmar Aderhold, I think we've got it there, Volkmar Aderhold from Germany, Petra Hone from Sweden, Mia Kurti from the Western Lapland team, and myself. So we've got 4 countries represented, and it's the first time that there's a blend of the foundation trainings that Volkmar has been developing in Germany and in the Parachute project with the foundation training from Tornia. So I'm excited to be a part of that team. And then we've just taken on a full-time administrator, Catherine. I don't know, is Catherine here? I'm sure he doesn't appreciate me. Catherine, there's Catherine. So this is going to increase our capacity for work. One of the more painful aspects of what we've been doing over the last couple of years is because there's so much work to do. I know that I personally haven't been as responsive as I'd like to have been, and for an approach that's all based on response, that's been quite painful at times, but delighted to have Catherine on board. I think that's going to help us to move forward. In terms of future plans, the next full training, 3-year training, will be starting in 2017, and we hope to have more details of that by the early summer. We continue to arrange seminars and conferences. There was a conference we had in February, maybe some of you were there, and you can see most of the presentations from that, as well as a report on the Mad in America website, so do have a look at that if you're interested. We want to start to do qualitative research using sort of video material to sort of try to start to say something about our understanding of the processes that can take place in this work, because even though that's not my kind of greatest passion is doing the work, I think we still have a responsibility to try to show something to help this work develop. And then the longer term sort of rather ambitious aim is to have a larger centre for training, practice, research and many other more social community-based activities. This year we'll be applying for charity status to help try and generate different streams of income to support this work. Notably, to provide free work for families and also free training places for people that can't find other ways of getting it funded. And that's going to involve applying for grants, maybe even contracts with trusts in the future, who knows. So there will be a much stronger connection. So that's what we're doing. And thank you very much once again for inviting me to
It's amazing what Nick accomplishes. He lives, eats, drinks, and when he has time, sleeps open dialogue. I don't think you have time for much else. But thank you for everything you've done to promote open dialogue in the UK, and good luck with your work. Inspiring. Another inspiring group of people. It's all about networks, and I think there's this kind of realization that mental health care can't exist on its own. It's all about communities and networks of communities and people helping each other and variety. And the National Survivor Users Network is one of the early organizations we contacted, and they've been a positive force ever since. Emma Perry is a research project coordinator, and she and her team will be talking about values-based commissioning. So thank you guys very much for coming today.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us here today. Yes, as Mark says, I'm Emma and I'm Research Project Coordinator at NSUN, National Survivor User Network, and I'll just ask the rest of the team to introduce themselves before I begin.
Hi, I'm Naomi Good, also from the National Survivor User Network, Research and Development.
I'm Felix Pring. I'm a member of the Make a Difference Alliance.
I'm Michael Whittaker and I'm a member of the Make a Difference Alliance.
Hello, my name is Victoria and I'm a Mad Alliance member, Make a Difference.
Okay, so NSUN. We are a service user and survivor-led charity that connects people with lived experience of mental health issues. So we have over 4,000 individual and over 600 group members. And our vision is to bring mental health service users and survivors together to communicate, to feel supported, and to have the power and the platform to have direct influence at every level. Now, some of our recent work has focused on values-based commissioning, and that is informed by values-based practice, and Mark was outlining those ideas in his earlier talk. So values-based commissioning is where everyone becomes equal partners. So service users, carers, clinicians, managers, they all become part of the commissioning model regarding mental health. So there's joint ownership, and power issues are worked through openly. So service users and carers have more of a say in what goes on in the services that they receive. And that's very similar to the aims of peer open dialogue. So values-based commissioning has been at the heart of the work of the MAD Alliance, the Making a Difference Alliance. So tell me, Naomi, who are the MAD Alliance?
Thank you, Emma. It's really wonderful to be alongside my colleagues from the National Survivor User Network and to see so many familiar faces throughout this array of people. Hello! What I'd like to say, just last year an alliance of leaders was formed of 32 carers and people with lived experience of emotional distress. They came together to advise and influence the provision of support to improve emotional well-being for the population served by North West London collaboration of clinical commissioning groups. The programme began just last year in 2015 with a 6-week vibrant creative leadership programme devised and delivered by NSUN, led by people with direct lived experience. The Making a Difference Alliance are as diverse as the 8 London boroughs communities that they represent. Their experiential knowledge really ranges from, sadly, it's seeking asylum, poverty, isolation, psychological, physical, sexual, relational, abuse and trauma, homelessness, racism, inequality and discrimination. The Alliance is unique. It advises strategically and also locally through the like-minded North West London Mental Health and Wellbeing Transformation Board, involving all partners as well. So the values-based commissioning really provided the springboard for everything that we do, for peer-led, experience-based co-design, a participatory action research approach, drawing from all of our stories and experiences, and for staff and service users and carers. So it's really about designing the experiences as opposed to designing procedures and systems over and over again. Experiences first. Like the open dialogue approach, we maintain the problem is the problem and not the person. So Felix, I'd like to ask you, what difference do we aspire to make?
Thank you, Naomi. We seek to use our by-experience expertise to influence, inform and motivate those responsible for commissioning mental health services. Our aim is to become an indispensable reference when the principles of treatment and care are being set down. By our stories, contributions and presence, we believe we can help transform suffering to healing and stale inertia to dynamic and enthusiastic purpose. We wish to make a real impact by urging that the highest priority be given to enhancing the dignity of all service users and their carers, and provide a means whereby we all feel empowered and represented. Because the whole process of designing, commissioning and providing excellent services, a huge asset for the whole community to be proud of, has been shaped in a big and really meaningful way by our genuinely valued participation. So I'd like to ask you, Mickey, what should be so important to us?
Thank you, Felix. That we should work now towards the Making a Difference Alliance, co-producing with Open Dialogue, which can help by working together towards the same goal, to be an effective voice for service users and carers. Together we are stronger. So Victoria, how do you see the Making a Difference Alliance in the future?
Thank you, Michael. I feel I need to give a meaning, a purpose and value to all what happened to my life for 30 long years, that today define me as a service user and peer support worker. So my deep wish is to see Mad Alliance become one of the main work streams in mental health, a future where Mad Alliance be present in strategic co-production programs, and not only. As today you can find a nurse in every GP surgery as a first aid access, mainly for a physical program, but what about the mental? So I envision that tomorrow in every surgery there could be a Mad Alliance member or a service user or a peer support worker for the mental health as a first access, as a first aid access. So to be able to give, through advice, information, guidance, the so-called gateway, but all based on dialogue, because everything begins with the dialogue. Dialogue is the initial step in the creation of value. Dialogue is the starting point, a unifying force in human relationship. Dialogue is about demonstrating respect for another's life, because through dialogue we can impart hope and shape the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. So, there's a number of ways in which dialogical methods can be used, and commissioning is one of them, and NSUN is leading the way in terms of showing how we can work in a dialogical way, in a non-hierarchical way, in a collaborative way to commission services. And of course, if we want to bring open dialogue about, then we need to influence commissioners too. And NSUN is a good example of doing that. And we've also thought about how we can try and encourage people to get involved with their local commissioners. And so Katie has been doing some work, who's been a coordinator of our project now for some time. And the most recent thing, and last thing she's been engaged in, is to try and help us find ways to help anybody who's interested in trying to push for this in their local area to do so through the CCGs. They're the guys who basically have all the cash. So over to Katie for some lobbying advice. Thank you, Katie.
Wow, what an emotional day. It's inspiring to share space with people that are so passionate about wanting change in the NHS system. I wanted to share with you about why I'm so passionate. And it's such an honour to be involved in this movement, but for me it's a bittersweet feeling at the moment. I know what it feels like to grow up with a mother who's suicidal since I've been born. I know what it feels like to watch my mother stretchered into a psychiatric ward after having attempted to stab herself in the heart with a kitchen knife because of too many years having to repress her anomalous experiences and emotions. I know what it's like to live in a family splintered through silence by an antiquated system that threatens madness if you dare to admit vulnerability. I know what it's like to have joined the mental health profession to try to protect myself from the same consequence. It was the only way I knew how to hide my own emotional fragility. I know what it feels like to become so ashamed of your own profession that it leads you to want to take your own life. I know the relief to be gained by finally talking about my own repressed emotions, daring to let down my defences, and how amazing it feels to deeply connect with others who have dared to do the same. I know how it feels to sit with a group of dedicated tutors, peers, at the end of a year of pod training, and not be ashamed to cry tears of happiness and gratitude that things are finally starting to change, that common sense is starting to prevail. I know how it is to feel so passionate about changing the mental health system that the incapacitating fear I'd once have felt at standing up here in front of you all today and talking about my own vulnerability can actually make us realise how strong that vulnerability makes us. This is my story. We all have a story, no more or less significant than another. The pain in our stories has the potential to give us the impetus to drive our passion forwards and connect us. We in Pod are channeling our passions into influencing change, and so many people today have asked me, what can we do? There is something that we can do. If you've been moved today, you can join us in supporting the Pod Pioneers campaign to make peer-supported open dialogue treatment as usual in the NHS. And as Russell said, the new peer-supported open dialogue website, which is listed here, contains a list of clinical commissioning groups in the UK. So, if you want to help us campaign for Pod in the NHS, you can go to the website, click on How to Lobby for Pod. and you'll find a document which lists, this is really awkward, I'm trying to do it from here and not on the laptop, of every single area in the UK with your local group, and instructions as to how you can join the most influential group within that clinical commissioning group, a body, advisory group, patient reference group. So just to give you an example, if you click on Barnet, get involved, and you'll find a list of groups. You're looking specifically for the patient reference group. The patient participation groups aren't as influential, so it's important that you actually contact the patient reference group. And if you click on there, you'll find instructions of how to join. Some of the areas don't have patient reference groups. So I've listed the contact telephone numbers, or some have the actual email addresses of people that you need to contact. What you need to be saying is that you would like to join any advisory board which influences decisions for clinical care in that area. Just another example, Airedale. So if the area does not list a patient reference group, the next best thing to get involved with is the Consumer Champion for Healthcare, Health Watch. So if we scroll down, all of these instructions will be listed in your specific area. So click on Health Watch Bradford if you're on Bradford, and you'll find a take part, which will lead you to instructions how to apply. So, being involved with this amazing movement has given me such inspiration. But the reason it's bittersweet is because my own mother, who 40 years later, a couple of months ago, made her face black and blue from banging her head on a brick wall repeatedly because of the frustration at not getting the correct services or services to help. So we need everybody in every area in the UK to speak out and to demand this change. And as Margaret Mead said, there is immense power in passionate people. Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have. Imagine what all of us here today can do if we all join together and request this change. Thank you.
Okay, so that was our final talk today. It's been a very, very moving day. We've heard stories of people's lives, profound and intimate stories. People have brought us into their homes in the way they've described the experiences they've had in receiving open dialogue and the care they've received and their history and their life stories up to that point. We've also heard about research and how we might try and bring this about. We've heard about the services that are available, and the trainings are also available in this area. It's a shared journey that we're on through coming to a place like this here today and hearing each other. And we don't know exactly where it will take us. But we do know, and I believe, that if we work from here and we move forward together with the power of what we hear and what we know is really able to help people, then we really can make a change. And I think that a positive change is really possible. As Katie said, it's a few people who really want to make a difference are the only thing that has ever actually created change. And I believe that is something that's possible and within our grasp. So thank you all for joining us on this journey. Thank you for coming here today. And we look forward to seeing you all again next year with another progress report. Safe journey home.
Let you know that if you have a bag locked away in the cloakroom, if you make your way to